Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to dive headfirst into the absolutely epic story of Genghis Khan and how he built the largest contiguous empire in human history. Seriously, we're looking at how one guy who was born into literal obscurity managed to wrangle a bunch of warring nomadic tribes into a rigidly disciplined military superpower. And then he just swept across the globe, from the Pacific coast of China all the way to the Adriatic Sea. It is an unbelievable story of sheer willpower, wild ambition, and world-shaping consequences. Let's get right into it.
So, right off the bat, let's tackle this fascinating modern paradox. How did a people who literally blanketed half the known world, completely rewriting the maps of Asia and Europe, how did they become the sparsely populated developing nation we know today? To figure out how a seemingly unstoppable force could hit such insane heights and then just fade from global dominance, well, we have to look at the incredibly unique conditions that created them in the first place.
To understand how mighty nations can fade away, we actually need to rewind the clock back to the 12th century Mongolian steppe. Now, this wasn't some unified country back then. No, it was a brutal, unforgiving landscape filled with rival clans and endless bitter blood feuds. These nomadic tribes were just constantly stuck in a loop of fragmentation and petty squabbling. They survived out on the absolute margins, living a completely different life than the settled, farming societies down south in China. It was a world where just staying alive was a daily battle, and you know what? That brutal environment is exactly where our story kicks off.
Section 1. Surviving the harsh steppe and a brutal beginning.
Okay, so before he was the terrifying Genghis Khan, he was just an outcast named Temujin, and he had to forge a truly unbreakable will to survive. After his father was poisoned by rival Tatars, his own clan totally abandoned his family, leaving them completely defenseless just to steal their power. Think about the wild extremes of this guy's life for a second. You've got a destitute boy surviving on scrounged roots and fish, who was even captured at one point and locked in a heavy wooden collar like a prisoner. Fast forward a bit, and he's at the peak of his early power, commanding an army of 20,000 men. So, how on earth do you bridge that massive gap? Really, it all boiled down to his sheer magnetic personality and his uncanny ability to attract these fiercely loyal followers, even when he literally had nothing to his name.
Section 2. Forging a unified nation and breaking the clan systems.
Now, to build up his initial power base, Temujin did something radical. He completely shattered the traditional clan systems. Instead of caring about your bloodline, he demanded personal obedience and promoted people based solely on merit and loyalty. That was a total game changer. He also heavily leveraged strategic friendships, specifically this concept of anda, which essentially means a sworn brother. For instance, when his wife's birthday was kidnapped by the rival Merkit tribe, which, by the way, was really just the continuation of an incredibly old grudge, Temujin didn't actually have an army to get her back. So what did he do? He took a super valuable sable skin, a bridal gift, and presented it to a powerful Khan named Togrul, cleverly rekindling an old anda relationship that his father had, and it worked. Togrul gave him 20,000 troops, which let Temujin rescue his wife and totally crush his enemies.
After defeating the Merkit, his rise to power became incredibly systematic and, honestly, ruthless. Next on his list, the Tartars. Remember, these were the guys who poisoned his father, and Temujin utterly destroyed them. He didn't stop there either. He dismantled rival coalitions, even those led by his former allies, making absolutely sure no nomad leader was left standing to stab him in the back. So the big turning point is 1206. After mastering the steppe and eliminating the old aristocracy, a massive assembly officially proclaimed Temujin as Genghis Khan, which most likely translates to the universal ruler.
Section 3. The Unstoppable War Machine in the Mongol Military.
So, with the steppe finally united under a single banner, the Mongol nation was officially born. And make no mistake, this nation was built for one thing: war. Genghis Khan turned his eyes outward, gearing up to burst out of the steppe and launch plunder and conquest on a scale the world had literally never seen. His military genius boiled down to a flawless decimal system that broke troops into rigidly disciplined units, but their ultimate superpower? Lightning-fast cavalry mobility. See, they rode these hardy, grass-fed Mongol ponies that basically didn't need extra fodder, meaning they weren't bogged down by the heavy, slow supply lines that ruined other armies. They could strike with unimaginable speed. And they backed all this up with a highly calculated psychological warfare that just paralyzed their enemies with fear.
But here's the catch. Pure cavalry can't exactly charge down a massive stone wall, right? So how did they conquer heavily fortified cities in China and the Islamic world? Well, they were ruthlessly adaptable. Genghis Khan didn't just throw his hands up and quit. He learned. He took captured advisors and completely integrated their knowledge. Almost overnight, his army adopted complex siege warfare, using catapults, burning oil, and they even went as far as diverting entire rivers to flood cities. They also captured local craftsmen and peasants, tragically forcing them to build siege engines or even act as advanced human shields against their own people. This kind of incredible, terrifying adaptability let them just sweep across the globe. By 1211, they were hammering the Jin Empire in northern China, and they actually captured Beijing in 1215. But maybe the most dramatic explosion of violence happened out west. A local governor in the Muslim Khwarezm Empire made a fatal mistake. He massacred a caravan of Muslim merchants who were traveling under Genghis Khan's personal protection. Oh, that provoked an implacable, absolute vengeance. By 1222, Genghis Khan had unleashed his full fury on the Khwarezm Empire, storming city after city in brutal retaliation.
The historical sources from this time are just packed with horrific accounts of these invasions. It's perfectly summed up by a 13th century chronicler who literally likened the Mongols to devils pouring straight out of hell. And we have to impartially recognize that these massacres weren't just random violence. They were a meticulously calculated weapon. It was terrifying psychological warfare designed to completely sap any will to resist, paralyzing enemy cities into just surrendering before a battle even kicked off. It was absolutely brutal, but from a strategic standpoint, it worked.
Section 4. The Legacy of Empires and the Aftermath of Conquest. Genghis Khan left behind an immense, deeply complex legacy that is full of intense contradictions. We really have to look objectively at the full picture here. On one hand, you've got the devastating tactics, the methodical massacres, the intentional destruction of vital farming irrigation works, the fostering of sheer, paralyzing terror. But then, on the flip side, you have some truly remarkable state-building innovations. He took illiterate, warring tribes and forged a unified nation. He brought in advisors to create a written Mongol language. He actually established widespread religious tolerance, and he quickly recognized the economic value of peasants and craftsmen as producers of taxable goods. It's a pretty wild juxtaposition.
So let's circle back and answer our opening paradox. Why did this massive, unstoppable empire eventually fade away? History reveals a fascinating cycle here, something we can call the sedentary trap. Nomadic conquerors are incredibly successful specifically because of their lightning mobility and the fact that they don't rely on heavy infrastructure. But the moment they conquer a settled, sedentary society, like China for example, they have to actually settle down and rule it. And the second they do that, they lose that traditional basis of military superiority. Over time, the conquerors get swallowed up and absorbed by the massive cultures they originally sought to rule, which inevitably leads to the empire fragmenting.
When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he had successfully conquered a staggering landmass that stretched all the way from Beijing to the Caspian Sea. But he didn't just leave behind conquered territory. He handed off to his carefully chosen successor an army and a state that were in their absolute prime. He proved that sheer ambition, when you combine it with brilliant adaptability and unyielding discipline, can literally rewrite world history.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We so often look at our modern nations and global superpowers as permanent, unbreakable fixtures of the world. But if the greatest continuous continental empire in history, a literal unstoppable war machine that completely reshaped Eurasia, can eventually succumb to the cycles of history and fade away, well, what is the true lifespan of the nations we consider so permanent today? It's a profound reminder that in the grand sweep of human history, absolutely nothing lasts forever. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.